on dreams, feeling, and consciousness by two gentlemen to my right. The first person to my right is Dr. Joseph Hart. The second person at the end is Dr. Richard, or as he prefers to be called, Riggs Corriere, from the Center Foundation of Los Angeles. I'm Don Schuster here in the Psych Department. It's my privilege to introduce these gentlemen. Let me tell you a little bit about them first. Probably the most interesting thing, or one of the, we'll be having an interruption at 8 o'clock. Apparently this thing has been variously advertised as 7 p.m. or 8 p.m., so we're expecting some more people to come on in. So if you sit tight long enough, you may hear the same thing twice tonight. You may learn twice as much. These two gentlemen, for the last 2 years, have been engaged in the dream research business, the dream therapy business, and the counselor training business in connection with their psychotherapy counseling practice in Los Angeles at the Center Foundation. Their research, I think, is very exciting because it has to do with a different type of dreams, a different approach to dreams, and they're here to tell you all about it, what they call the breakthrough dream or the transformation dream, and they have a book. If you pardon me just a minute, I'll pick it up. Matter of fact, they have 3 books, I think, of which we just have 2 here. The Dream Makers and Going Sane, which describe in some depth, and they have been on television and radio on numerous occasions to describe these different things. I think we're really rather lucky to have them here tonight talking about the use of dreams as a natural psychotherapeutic force. Let me tell you briefly about them. The person on my far right, Vic Corriere, the first one of the authors, one of the speakers tonight. If I recall, he came out to the University of California, Irvine, during his PhD there. His dissertation is on transformation of dreams. And the person close to me, Dr. Joe Hart, went through Stanford, I guess. And again, wasn't your research on dreams also?
No.
Okay.
Wrong. Oh, I'm leaving. Oh.
Diamond is different.
It was on remembering.
All right. I should have remembered that. Sorry. Okay, so it's my pleasure and our privilege here this evening as part of the GSB Committee on Lectures to welcome these two gentlemen here to Iowa State University campus, Dr. Hart and Dr. Corriere.
We can do it later. We're going to need a chalkboard.
Hey, Joe, look at, we just get here from California and look at her, this girl's talking already.
What did she say?
She just said something really bad about you.
LA psychologist, something like that.
No, she said, he's so handsome, that red-headed one.
Oh!
Actually, what I wanted to know is how you spell Riggs.
R-I-G-G-S.
Have you ever been to Washington, D.C.? The Riggs National Bank. That's not him.
It's my last name that gave me trouble when I was a child in school.
Okay.
I'm afraid of chalkboards. Oh! Can we put it up on? Oh, let me see it right here. Can you see this? Oh, God! Get over here!
Hey, right this way.
Oh, he's strong. I'm weak. Oh my God.
You guys are lucky. I had one of them fall down on me in class at the front of the lecture today.
The diagram I'm doing right now, I want you to see, is the key to our lecture. sorry. I get confused.
Well, we're also available for short haul moves.
You wanted to know how to spell my first name. It was really sad when I was in first grade. They asked me to spell my last name, which was Courier. I didn't know what a C was, you know, and they said, how do you spell your last name? Huh? I always wanted a name like Jones or something. Those kids always could spell their names and they always got good grades. But I found out if your name's complicated enough, you get a PhD. That's true, you understand that? You don't hear of Dr. Jones or Dr. Smith, you know. Dr. Cornell, no. What'd you learn from him? Something important.
Must be Bella Asarinsky over there. Well, we're just fooling around. We don't know what's going to happen if a whole flock of people come in at 8. What will we do? Just start repeating the same stuff over again? Good evening. Good evening.
Hey, I'll tell you what we could do. We could just make them feel very bad.
I'll turn around and point at them.
Just go, ah! You could just freak them completely out. They walk in and we'll just let them in one at a time and everybody will stand and go, stop interrupting! We won't. You notice that Joe's lecture notes are white and mine are yellow. I forgot my lecture notes tonight, but I know this lecture pretty well. Let's
just start. Come on. We'll make them dead set to miss all this good stuff. Of course, there is better late than never, people do say that. Stitch in time, people say that too. Here we go.
Joe, don't be corny here in Iowa.
For the 1,000,000th time, right?
It's ridiculous that. But is it true? I've heard a rumor that your corns grow larger here. I got an anonymous phone call just before I left LA, and someone on the other end said, "Corn voyage." Hey, I gotta try my material out someplace. I work with very sick people. Do you want me just to come in here depressed? It'd be horrible. I come in, I took 14 Thorazine today, you know. I'm sorry to interrupt. Let's get started.
Is that on those notes?
I told you I lost my notes.
Okay. This will be exciting tonight. I want to start by telling you about a date. Do you know this date? May 6, 1954. On that date, a barrier was broken. If you know anything about track, you'll know what date that was. Who knows? What?
4-minute mile broke.
You bet. That's the date on which Roger Bannister ran a sub 4-minute mile. And when he was interviewed after breaking that record, which it held, the record he broke, it held for 9 years. And of course, people had been trying to run sub 4-minute miles for years and years and years. He said it was as much a psychological barrier, a mental barrier, as a physical barrier that he had broken.
Oh, excuse me. I didn't know you meant for me to start right now.
Yeah.
I was just kind of writing out my speech. The physiology of sleep.
Here.
No. When we did Good Morning America, we met Bruce Jenner, and we started traveling around a lot together because we'd invariably, he lives in Los Angeles, and we'd fly out together and we'd fly back together, and we started to talk. And everyone knows Bruce Jenner as the world record holder in the decathlon. And I said, well, what about before the decathlon? What was it like for you? And he said, most people don't realize this, but I wasn't an athlete at all. I saw my first track meet and got inspired at the Drake Relays. At that point, he said, it was so exciting, I decided to become a track man. He said, because I did that, he said, very few people ever found out that I came in 10th in the '72 Olympics. Wheaties didn't sign him up. Nobody cared what he ate. In fact, he didn't eat very well. But he had a drive. Thank you very much. I like 2 burgers. Thanks, Tom. He had a drive inside of himself to do something more. And that's what we're going to try to talk to you about tonight. A drive. Because when you talk to anyone who does anything, especially like the decathlon, it's grueling. It takes a long time. And Bruce said, I said, well, what was it like, Bruce? And he said, it wasn't as painful as I just felt myself being fulfilled. I knew I was moving towards something. And that's what we're going to try to talk to you about tonight. How you can begin psychologically moving towards something completely new.
We're psychologists. Even worse than that, psychotherapists. Shrinks. That means people think we're going to talk about psychopathology, problems, and then we're going to read minds. We're going to find the nasty secrets. Actually, we're not real good at that. We can't read minds beyond the 10th row.
Okay.
A lot of racy stuff is going on in the second row, I want to tell you.
Joe, the guy with the beard here in the second row, oh my.
No, it's embarrassing. I just tuned in. We want to present to you a new kind of psychology. A psychology that doesn't focus on problems, but a psychology that focuses on growth and development and breaking personal barriers. A psychology that leads you to recognize your own personality limits and begin to do something about them. When I was a graduate student at the University of Wisconsin, one of my professors there, the main man I worked with, was Dr. Carl Rogers, a famous psychotherapist. And when I started going to conventions and giving talks, he told me to make sure that I looked at the audience, because I tended to give talks like this, you know. Well, the Latin square analysis showed that Group A was superior to Group B. He told me to look at the audience, and then he gave me one good tip, which I followed, and I'm going to follow tonight. He said, always be sure you tell the audience first what you're going to tell them, then tell them, and then at the end tell them again what you just told them. What we're going to tell you tonight is about breaking barriers in psychotherapy and how we broke some personal barriers for ourselves and with our colleagues when we set up our special kind of psychotherapy in our clinic in Los Angeles. Then we're going to tell you about some of the dream discoveries that came out of that clinical work and some of the research supporting those discoveries. And then we're going to tell you about something new. We call it psychological fitness. We'll be reviewing books that we've written before, like these books, Going Sane and The Dream Makers. And we'll also be previewing some books that are coming out. There's a new book coming out in February called Psychological Fitness. And there's another book on dreams coming out called Dreaming and Waking. And we'll be previewing books that we're working on right now. Because as we travel around and talk to people, we like to try out ideas and test things that we have on paper. We'll be reviewing and previewing. And we'll try to bring all of this together so that you know what kind of a personal discovery we went through. Because one of the things I want you to know right away about psychotherapy is that psychotherapy involves not only research and learning about things, but in search, you have to learn a lot about yourself. And before you can help other people to do any changing on their own, you have to do quite a bit of changing of yourself. And that continues and continues and continues.
Before we tell you, can you hear me when I just talk directly? Okay. Before we tell you what the ideas are, I want to tell you how we're going to do it. We're going to go back to what we think is a vital tradition in education, and that's the oral tradition. Because we've written books, and you could read those, and we could just say, well, why doesn't everybody here read a book? And the students who invited us here, and the faculty members who invited us here could just buy you all books and say, read that. We think the oral tradition is very important because the books are just books. You know, it's written by Joseph Hart, Richard Courier, Joseph Hart. But who are they? What are they like? What are their lives like? And that's what we want to tell you about. We want to tell you about who wrote these books and what these books mean to us, so that you begin to get effectively educated. So you not only go away with an intellectual idea, this is what they mean, you go away with a feeling. And the way we want to do that is we want to do it as evocatively as we can. We want you to feel yourselves listening to us. And we want to do it with as much fun as we can. We don't believe in getting up and saying, hello, ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk to you about my first book, Going Insane. The main idea in Going Insane is the disorder theory. In the disorder theory, we're talking about sensations, meaning, expressions, how they can be ordered or disordered in the individual. This replaces the common causes of pathology, blah, blah, blah. That's irrelevant to us. That's not the way we discovered them. We want to be like we are when we're at home. We joke around a lot. We have a good time. Don't mistake that for simplicity or simplistic. We are simple, and our ideas are simple. And we hope to take that simple way of presenting and challenge some things in you. Challenge some intellectual concepts that you have, some concepts that say, this is the way that I am, or this is the way psychology is. And we want to challenge some emotional concepts. Mostly, we want to challenge what we call your personal psychology. Because everyone in the room is already a psychologist. I don't say that as some thing to ingratiate myself to you. You do it all the time. You see someone walking down the street and you go, look at that weirdo. I mean, that person is really weird. Or you say, oh, look at that nerd. Oh, look at that girl. She is just so terrible. Or I really like that person. That person really had something. But what you don't ask yourself is how you developed your method of diagnosis. Because we think that many people are using improper methods. Methods that don't give them something more. Something that challenge their own barriers. And that's what we want to do tonight. We want to teach you a new psychology and a new philosophy that goes with it. That will enable you to look at yourself, at psychology, and other people in an entirely new light.
When we began our clinic and started with 7 colleagues this therapy called feeling therapy or functional therapy, we didn't have any particular techniques that we wanted to try out or theories that we wanted to try out. We had a couple of practical ideas that we were very earnest about. And those ideas have continued to be at the core of our practice. And those ideas, we believe, have led to many of our discoveries. The first basic idea was that therapists should continue to get therapy. All too often, therapists go through a training period, they get a diploma, maybe they go through a training analysis, and then somehow they are cured and they don't need help anymore. We didn't find that to be true for ourselves. Even though we had lots of training, and we had in our group psychiatrists and clinical psychologists and social workers and counselors who had many, many kinds of training, we found that we still needed personal help. And we weren't so sure that maybe we weren't just a strange group, and maybe we just needed more help than any other therapist. We had a hunch maybe others would need it too. So the first thing that we did was to make sure that all of our therapists received therapy regularly and continuously. So that has continued. All of our therapists today receive individual and group therapy all the time. They need it. Therapy is a very stressful activity. We also observed that the people who seemed to be getting the most out of most therapies were the therapists. They were the ones who really got involved in it. And we thought, well, maybe if somebody is smart enough to be a patient, they surely would be smart enough to be a therapist. And we began to teach all of our patients to be co-therapists for one another. And in that way, after a period of time, they didn't have to be dependent upon us. Those two ideas form the core of our early practice. They're very simple, but they're also very controversial, because therapists who've trained for years and years and years don't want to be suddenly told, you need to continue to get therapy for yourself. And they don't want to be told, unless your patients become therapists for one another, they're going to be stopped at a certain level of personal development.
Think about that. Those seem like extraordinarily simple ideas. But if you begin actively practicing those ideas, they have very, very serious consequences. Some of the consequences are it begins changing the theories. It begins changing one theory of the idea of pathology, of what it is or what it isn't. Because right now, psychology tries to believe in things like neurosis, okay? Our maladaptive behaviors. And people say, that person is a depressive. Who's saying that? That's the question we always ask. Who's the person who's labeling? Most psychologists are not labeling from a position of positive mental health, and they don't want to hear that. And so we get into lots of professional fights. Because people say, no, the theory says it. And I say, in reality, when push comes to shove, the theory goes out, because it's just you and another person. The theory is irrelevant. What's your life like? Because the patient isn't going to get well because of the theory. If theories worked, everyone would be different. We wouldn't have the kind of problems we have in our society that we have today. Theories don't work that way. And it's not clean intellectually or methodologically. When you throw in the therapist, it's not easy to do research on, because all of a sudden there's all kinds of confounding variables. But we think that's the way life really is. It isn't that clean. Psychology is definitely not chemistry. It will never be physics, but it can be psychology. if you call it what it is. The idea of pathology went out, and the idea for us came of a new form of mental health. And that's what we call the book Going Sane, a continuous process of sanity. Do you understand that? Not just an absence of symptoms, but a dynamic process of going sane. And when you combine those two things, we won't go into the technical details of our theory because we have too much information we want to cover. Those are the key ideas. And if you get particularly interested in that, you can ask questions later on when we have a question and answer period, and we can talk about those, the theories and how they developed. We have a whole new theory about sanity and pathology and all the things involved. But those two key ideas, who's delivering the services and how are they? And who's getting the services and how are they? Because most clients, our patients, our sickos, or whoever you want to call them, they don't want to get well. Just like you don't want to know too much. Why should you? There's no social model for mental health in our culture. Psychiatrists got 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 patients. It's a business. He's not that interested in having them all leave. And the people who are coming are lonely. They're not they're coming there because they want somebody to talk to. And if you give them each other to talk to in a systematic way, it challenges the foundations on which psychology and psychotherapy work today.
I want to tell you about I'll tell you a story about a couple of people. We'll call them Sig and Carl. These two people were psychotherapists back in the 1900s.
Are you changing their names to protect their real identities?
No. This is a true story. This story will illustrate to you what happens when psychotherapists don't get beyond their personal barriers. When Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung traveled to the United States in about 1908 to deliver the first lectures on psychoanalysis at Clark University, they traveled by boat, of course. They had lots of time to dream, lots of time to talk about their dreams. In the morning, they'd get together and they'd share dreams, and they'd use the new free association method, which they were very excited about, and apply it to those dreams. It's a pretty good method if you want to unravel dream symbols. One morning, Freud had a really bothersome dream. He told Carl Jung the dream, and then Carl said, well, go ahead, you better tell me some associations to this. And Freud said, no, I cannot risk my authority. This is reported in Jung's memoirs. And Jung said, at that moment, Freud lost all authority for me. And we say, at that moment, psychoanalysis effectively stopped. Because what was happening was that those two men were maintaining a barrier. And it's okay to maintain barriers in certain situations. But if you're two psychotherapists who are going to work with patients trying to help them get beyond barriers, and you're trying to help each other get beyond barriers, it's fatal. What happened was this. I'll show you. I'll simplify it. There's the inner self and the outer self. The inner self, your feelings and thoughts. The outer self, what you show, what you express. At that moment, when Freud refused to give the associations that would have made the dream meaningful and intelligible, he set up a barrier between his inner self and his outer self, and what Jung could see of him. When that happens, something has to fill that in. And what fills it in are problems, interpersonal problems and personal problems. You know, Freud's history, he lost colleague after colleague, Jung, Adler.
Collies?
Colleague.
Oh, I thought called like Lassie.
Right here, colleague.
I wondered where Lassie went, you know. I was wondering.
Come home, colleague.
Yeah, I just wanted to know where Lassie went. How many people here are concerned about Lassie? I like you, you know. Didn't Lassie ever make you cry? When Lassie's falling in rivers and saving people and broken-hearted children? I thought Lassie was a great psychotherapist.
See, when Lassie consulted with Carl and Sig, she told him, Lassie was a she told him, you know, what you've done, you've set up a barrier between your inner self and your outer self.
That's right.
And that's going to lead to lots of problems. You know what we're talking about. That has to get filled with problems. If the relationship is very important to you, and if it sustains you very much, then when you take away the relationship, you have to fill it up with something else. And people fill it up with all kinds of things. Work troubles, marriage troubles, anxiety, depression. When we travel around the country, we like to take little surveys and find out what the favorite problems are in different parts of the country. So we'd like to hear right now what
Joe,
they are.
wait a minute, Joe. Excuse me.
Can't do this?
Joe, there's no problems here.
Is that right?
This is Iowa State, right? The center,
Gee.
the absolute center of mental health of the country. The progressive social center of the Midwest.
Gee, but, you know, every place has a few. I mean, if you remember, I was tuning in on those people in the first 10 rows.
Well,
There was Polynesian paralysis. You know, it was a terrible thing. People would, they said day after day, they'd get up and they just, you know, they,
hold it! What are you laughing at?
Polynesian paralysis. What we have here is pollination paralysis.
would you write that up there? Well, pollination paralysis is put in its bid.
We'll just abbreviate it as PP. Oh, look at how dirty they are. Just PP, pollination paralysis.
What age does that start?
Germination.
The other great problem that they have in Hawaii is called rock fever. You wake up one day, the sun's shining, temperature's great, and you realize you're in the middle of the ocean on a rock. Ah! And they don't know what to do. Does that ever happen to you out here? I want you to know this. I'll tell you one of my problems. I'm driving around, I'm saying to Joe, where's the mountain? And he said, what? He said, hey, sucker, where's the mountain?
San Bernardino.
That's right. We have mountains all over in Los Angeles. I mean, we have all kinds of other things, too. The other day I went out and I saw this bright object in my front yard, and it was hot, and I thought it was Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You know, Joe came over and told me it was the sun. I hadn't seen it in days. When we got here, we had trouble breathing. Hey,
Here they come, I told you. We're just getting serious.
Ah,
Oh my God.
so, as I was saying, please, because
I knew I was in a different time zone.
in order to make Joe keep faith, could you just tell me one or two small problems? Money.
Money, money, money.
Yes, there's that great problem. Anything else here? Weather, yes.
Weather. Rick didn't know anything about thunderstorms until we got here.
Yeah,
I taught him last night all about them.
I wake up in the middle of the night and there's this little tug on my toe. And, you know, it was raining and thundering and all that thing I was doing. This little tug's going, and I look and Joe's, the lamp's on, he's looking out the window. I said, what's the matter, Joe? There's this kite way up in the air. And there's a stream coming down to my toe. And he said, I want you to experience. And then we went out today,
I said, hi, Benji.
and he had a umbrella, and he gave me a sort of an umbrella. It was like this long wire about 20 feet tall. He said, just carry it around like this. I didn't know what it was for, but I just did it. What kind of
There
problem?
must be, like, isn't there an anxiety block here somewhere?
In
Aren't there
Iowa?
A few books for anxiety.
Graduate frustration.
What?
Graduate frustration.
Oh.
Graduate frustration.
Yes.
One of my very favorites. I like it when my old favorites come through. I like to back the old horses. Depression? No depression?
Overcrowding. You just said it.
I can't hear you.
I just was gonna say. Depression!
Oh, depression!
I couldn't go on. Overcrowding?
Hey, they're moving in on the far 100 acres there.
Overcrowding in Iowa?
Oh, on campus. You have a campus. Be grateful. We talk to some places that do not have campuses.
Sorry, we're supposed to be at Harvard. Procrastination. And procrastinators are procrastinators, aren't they? You don't get that well. It goes really big in California, but hey.
Can we have like a secret showing of hands by all the shyness problems? You can hold your hands down. I know shyness has got to be a problem somewhere on this big campus. 22,000 people. Is that how many people are here? 24?
God, it grew in 2 days. Huh.
Jeez.
Promiscuity. How many people are enrolled in your family? Boom. Sorry. What else?
Loneliness in a crowd.
Okay.
Loneliness in the crowd. That's a big one.
All right. Homesickness. Excuse me, I get in trouble from that. Homesick. Strange, I used to be sick at home. When I was a child, I'd wake up in the morning, my mother would fix me these huge bowls of anxiety. Go to lunch, the nuns fix you guilt. Time you get to college and graduate students, your professors feed you depression. I think you're wrong. Oh, you work for weeks on one solution and your professor tells you you're wrong. So you learn to be depressed. What else?
Lack of identity.
Lack of identity. How should I put that up? Identity, no. Okay?
Favorites we're leaving out?
Any cultural things that go on here that maybe keep you... Lack of culture?
Cultural deprivation? Yeah.
Cultural, no. Okay.
No, LA Philharmonic is coming this year.
Cultural, no.
If you're lucky, you'll get the LA Rams. Then you can lose all the way.
I don't know if you know what it's like to live in a city like Los Angeles. They promise you to win, you know, all the time, all the sports teams, and they invariably lose. I mean, I'm from Chicago. I'm
Chicago
glad I'm
isn't even
from
close.
Chicago. Okay, what else?
Deadline pressures.
Deadline pressures.
Write that up there very fast.
Okay? What? Relating? Okay, relating.
Isn't there any paranoia in this state? Little paranoia someplace here and here? Could I see any hands up for paranoia? Oh,
Hey!
good. I like that one. We always write that one on the back. Don't want to show it. And I wrote in very small letters, so you're safe.
Yes, overeating as we call it. I think one of the greatest Madison Avenue cons that they've ever come up with is queen size. People used to be fat, now they're queen size or king size. Eventually you get to be giant. How are you? Whoa! The suit fits me just right, it's giant size. What? What else?
How about worrying about being conforming?
Say it again.
Worrying about conforming.
Worrying about just worrying about, okay?
We like to just have worrying about so you can go ... fill in anything you like.
Fear of death. Yes, it's just outright, isn't it? Yes, just death. We'll talk about death later on in the lecture.
We make it.
Okay, we're closing up here. Any more bids? What? Grapes?
Great, we lectured there 2 nights ago. Oh, grades! Grades.
Grades?
They give grades here?
Joe and I taught a course
Or
once,
you have to take them?
and we said to the class, okay, everyone has an A. We thought this was a very progressive thing to do. Those of you who are really interested in learning, stay. Gone. We failed them all. Grades. Okay. Now, we've closed up the problems. Notice the way they look. It looks like the inside of my head. This, believe it or not, is what a dream looks like. And this is what we discovered. Someone's cooking popcorn for us here. I appreciate that. Okay. It's like a little ant farm back there. They're setting things up. We discovered, okay, this is some of our basic research in dreams. That when you're outer self, whoops, when your inner self and your outer self are far apart. Now, inner self meaning your thoughts and your feelings are separated from your behavior. You have what is known as symbolic dreams. Now we said, that doesn't make sense to us. Now, follow my logic. As the therapy that we developed became more intense, and people began integrating their thoughts, their feelings, and their behavior, what do you think happened to their dreams? Their dreams became less symbolic. Patients began reporting dreams in which they were the stars, in which there was little or no symbolism. And if there was a symbol, it broke, and the true feeling manifested itself. That's not supposed to happen. When you study the research literature, which we did very, very well, you find that only in isolated reports by anthropologists, reports of non-symbolic dreams, dreams that are directly telling you about your life, either your present waking life or your past, what went on as a child, what went on in grade school, and the feelings are very direct. So, for example, you'll dream of talking to your mother, and you'll experience tremendous insight of how frustrated you felt talking to her, and how that felt to you as a child. And in the dream, you'll begin to cry, and cry, and cry. Or if you're being pressured by an outside situation, you'll begin to respond directly to it, and say what you know, and realize, gee, I'm putting lots of barriers on myself in waking that aren't necessarily true in dreaming. What we found is that you can begin exercising your personality in the day, and that's reflected in your dreams. These new kind of dreams we call transformative or breakthrough dreams, because we mean literally you break through the symbolic barrier of your dream life.
Let me give you a very simple example of a symbolic dream, and then show you how that might become a breakthrough or transformative dream. Lots of people have dreams where they're being chased, and usually in the dream you go running through the dream, and then your feet get heavier and heavier, and you feel like you're running through sand, and you're about to be caught, and you wake up. Very frequently in these dreams, you'll be chased by a gorilla or a bear or some kind of animal. Well, that's obviously a symbolic dream unless you work in a zoo, okay? If you begin to have the kind of non-symbolic dreams that we're talking about, it might start out in a symbolic way. So you will dream about being chased by a bear, the bear's about to catch you, but at a certain point in the dream, you turn and you confront the bear, and it changes. It might change to someone at work who's been really bothering you. And at that point in the dream, you begin to have real feelings, which you express, toward a real person in your life. And when you wake up from that kind of dream, no interpretation is required. You don't have to figure out what the bear means, because you know what it means. It's changed already in the dream. What we did, once we noticed that those kinds of dreams could happen, was begin to teach people more and more to use their dreams in the morning as a kind of emotional exercise. Even people who were in psychotherapy, people who just wanted a kind of affective education. So we could teach people, first of all, how to remember their dreams, and we can teach you that here tonight if you have trouble. And then we can teach people how to use their dreams in a completely different way, not interpreting their dreams, but functionally using their dreams. We did that by changing the focus of clinical work with dreams and the focus of dream research. We shifted from looking at the dream symbols, which certainly have a fascination. You know, everybody is puzzled and intrigued if they dream about green anchovies. Why did I dream about green anchovies? What can that mean about me? Does it just mean something I ate the night before? Or does it mean something I feel about somebody I'm agreeing with? And you can go on and on and on.
Excuse me. Do you ever think of me as a green anchovy?
No, I've never thought of you as a green anchovy until you wore that jacket. And
Go.
that tie.
Go ahead. Just had to check that out, you know.
If you change the focus from looking at the content and the symbols to looking at the dreamer, then you begin to see something different. Look at the dreamer and begin to ask questions not about what does this dream mean or what does this symbol mean, but ask instead, how am I? What is my personality like in my dreams? And begin to ask very specific questions about your personality dynamics. I'll tell you 5 that we found to be very, very important. You can ask, how expressive am I in my dreams? By expression, I just mean, how much do you say? Lots of people have dreams all the time where they don't say a thing. Ask yourself, how active am I in my dreams? Lots of people have dreams all the time where they're not active at all. They're just passively observing. Ask yourself, how much feeling do I have in my dreams? How much feeling, inner emotions do I have? Do I sustain and allow? Ask yourself, how clear am I in this dream? A lot of clarity is shown when you know what's going on. You even know you're dreaming. Very low clarity is shown when you can barely remember anything. Who was in it, what was said, where you were, what it means when somebody says something to you. You don't understand anything, you just wake up from it confused. And finally, ask yourself, how much contact did I make in this dream? And by contact, I just simply mean, did you have friends in the dream? Did you approach them or go away from them? Did they approach you or go away from you? Many people, in fact, most people, the normative dream in the United States and in Europe is a dream where the dreamer is passive, anxious, and alone. And if not alone, with strangers. When people begin to get their inner self and their outer self together in waking, they begin to change all of these personality dynamics. That begins to change their dream life, which in turn helps them to change their waking even more. They begin to be in a positive cycle. Now you need your dreams every night. Everyone dreams every night, whether you remember or not. Most of you know this. So you have about 5 dreams every night. You dream about 2 hours worth. The last dream may be 30, 40, or 50 minutes long. That's the dream you usually remember, if you remember one at all. That dreaming is important for you. It gives you a kind of emotional exercising. It's very vital. But it's very often incomplete. If you're having symbolic dreams over and over again, it tells you 2 things. The emotional exercising hasn't been completed. And the other thing it tells you is that this is the way I am in waking. Because the way you are in your dreams is the way you are in your waking life. It's just easier to hide in waking life. If you are having mixed up, confused, and anxious dreams, believe me, you are mixed up, confused, and anxious during the day. But you can distract yourself during the day because you can get busy and you can do this and that. But at night, there are no distractions. And dreams are basically pictures of feelings. So all you do during those dreams periods is picture over and over again how you felt during the day. And you, in effect, give yourself a second chance at night.
Think about this. You want to believe very clearly that if you could solve your problem, whatever it is, then everything would be okay. How many of you have trouble with your MasterCharge cards? Do you have MasterCharge cards? How about checkbooks? Balancing your checkbook, having enough? You're sure that when you have more money in your checkbook than you're writing checks for, things will be okay. When you're getting good grades, everything will be okay. When you're not depressed, when you're not overeating. All of those things, you believe, hey, that's the solution. That's not the solution. Anyone who tells you that is lying to you. You will experience problems in your life forever. What we're going to try to teach you are the dynamics, yes, there went 3 lectures, the dynamics of your personality and how your personality works so that you can deal with those problems more effectively. I'm going to show you something. You said expression, activity, feeling, clarity, and contact. I'm going to make up some numbers here, okay? These numbers don't mean anything. If your inner and outer selves are split apart, that means you're probably high in one of these personality characteristics and low in others. You're out of balance. And you begin to believe, you begin to limit your consciousness to this concept. Yes, I'm an intellectual. You don't say to yourself, yes, I'm an intellectual who can't express very well. Or yes, I'm an intellectual who's not very active. Or yes, I'm an intellectual who doesn't feel very much. You just say, yes, I'm an intellectual. And you believe that this is the end product of the universe. This is you. We don't agree with that. We think everyone's personality can begin to incorporate all of these dynamics at even the most basic level. Of course, you're going to have stronger points in your personality, but you can begin working on these dynamics. When you do, your dreams become what we call breakthrough dreams. When you don't, you see it immediately in your dreams. There's no greater test. Rorschachs aren't as good as your dreams as a psychological test, because the dream shows you exactly what you're making up. And what it is when these are out of balance, you have symbolic and bizarre and non-understandable dreams. When you're functioning, when you're making contact, there's friends of yours in the dream, when you're clear, when you're feeling full, when you're active, and when you're expressive, the dream is not symbolic. And if it is, you break through the symbolism. That's a major finding of ours, and it's a very important one. Because we believe, from our clinical work and from our research, that your waking personality parallels your sleeping personality, whether you want to admit that to yourself or not. We named the book The Dream Maker because you're the one who's making up the dreams. No one else is. I'm not making up your bad dreams. You are. Is that just the lightning, do you think? I mean, that's doing electrical interference? Yeah. That's interesting. We don't have lightning like that in Los Angeles. We don't have nighttime like this in Los Angeles. It's always just kind of brown. That's not true. Los Angeles is very nice. What we're saying is now what we found in our dream personalities can be applied to your waking personalities. And that's what we want to teach you about. We want to preview what we call psychological fitness.
We like the phrase psychological fitness because people have adopted over a period of time physical fitness. Things have really changed in this country. There's a lot more that can be done, but during the last 15 years, many, many people have become physically active. For example, during, I think the last 10 years, the number of people who actively participate in sports has doubled. And the number of people who exercise each week has more than doubled. Now that's a significant change. And people have a new attitude. They're not thinking that, they should just go see the doctor and let the doctor take care of them. They're thinking, I have to do something to take care of my own body. I have to do something regularly. And people are taking steps to do something. And what we're saying is the same thing can be done and needs to be done for you psychologically. People need to begin to be concerned about their psychological fitness. And they need to begin to do things which exercise their personality so that stresses don't become over-stresses and problems don't become crises. They're just problems. We like these parallels between physical fitness and psychological fitness. We think they're very close. We're going to introduce some of these ideas by showing you a slideshow which talks about some of the facts concerning mental health. And we'll then show you some of the things we do in psychological fitness training. Now, psychological fitness training is not psychotherapy. It's not for sick people who have problems. It's for people who are doing okay and they want to feel better in their lives. It's just like people don't start jogging. Some people start jogging after they have a cardiovascular accident. But most people today are beginning to jog just to feel better. Not even to prevent some kind of physical ailment. They just want to feel better. And we believe that's the best reason to begin personality exercises.
What we want to do is we'll show you the slideshow, but we want you to leave here tonight with an entirely new concept about what psychology can be and about the way that you can use psychology. We want you to leave and use these ideas that we're talking about immediately. You will use these ideas whether you want to or not. Because your brain picks them up and it immediately uses them. You can say, those son of a bitches, I hated them. And then all of a sudden you'll be saying, oh, what kind of expression am I using right now? How active am I right now? What am I doing right now? That's what we want you to do. Because we think it's vital that the country change its cultural attitudes towards psychology. Because psychology, as you know it right now, is for very bizarre things. It's either for rats or for behavior modification, or it's for psychoanalysis, and it's not very interesting, and it's definitely not useful for a normal person. It's only useful for bedwetters. It's only useful from a pathology model. Somebody just raised his hand, he wet the chair. It's all right. I do the same myself. We want you to do that, because if you do, you'll find you'll begin making up your own psychological exercises. You'll begin stressing your own personality. The parallel is very exact. You don't exercise your body, it atrophies, It rigidifies, it loses its ability to respond to stress. The same is true for your personality. You don't exercise your personality, it atrophies. Look at how you've changed as you've grown older. Often the changes aren't exactly the way you've planned. You thought things would be dandy when you got to be 30 or 40 or 50. You know, those of you who are younger are sure that when you're older and you've been through college and you've got a job and a wife or a husband or a dog or whatever you want, everything will be dandy. It won't be. If you don't know how to exercise your personality, society will keep asking you to not exercise it. I mean, think about it. Think about what you learned in school. You didn't learn in school anything more than how to sit in a desk for 8 hours. I mean, the good kids were the kids who didn't move. You know, they would sit like this.
He may not come out of this.
I'm very good at this behavior. That's the only way I made it through graduate school. I'd be sitting with my advisors and they'd say something, I'd look at the clock, because they don't say very much, ever. And they know that you don't ever say anything. We want you to become functional psychologists, each and every one of you. We don't want you to think of psychology as something that occurs. We want you to think of it as a skill that you possess, and you use it. And you use it on your dates. You use it to be more successful in school. You use it to be more successful in your job. You use it to understand people. And not a vague psychology, not some Oedipal trauma someplace. We're talking about a functional psychology like tuning a car. And later, after the slideshow, we'll talk to you about what we call maximum performance. Let's show the slideshow.
Okay? We have to move this.
Oh.
Let's just move it. Side. It's not going to work.
Can you see? If you can't see, just move over a little bit. There we go. What?
Put this down.
Good slideshow, isn't it? Hey! Home movies! You've got a very strong audiovisual department.
People have stopped being spectators. Ever since the years of JFK's administration, conditions never before known in history. People are more conscious of their physical appearance and physical well-being. People are literally exercising their way to health. In fact, in a recent Gallup survey, approximately one-half of the national representation reported that they exercise daily. That's twice that of 1961. In fact, the last 5 years have brought the most dramatic decline in the national death rate since the discovery of penicillin, which is due almost entirely to a reduction in heart disease from diets and exercise. In fact, the average lifespan is up 3 years in the last decade. In fact, we are in the midst of a participant sports boom. We're buying more bicycles than automobiles, and the number of skiers and tennis players has tripled. In fact, the number of young women participating in interscholastic and intercollegiate sports has quadrupled in the last decade. In fact, there are 10 million joggers and 15 million serious swimmers among America's 110 million adults. In fact, within the past decade, tennis became the fastest growing participant sport in the country, from 6 million to 30 million. The fact of the matter is that people have been stretching, strengthening, striving, and moving toward healthier lives. But physical fitness is only half the story. Loneliness, anxiety, depression, frustration. The other half of the story, the inside story, is that people live with these realities. Realities that keep them psychologically out of shape. Realities that result in serious consequences. In fact, roughly 50,000 Americans kill themselves yearly, and at least 200,000 try and fail. 88% of adolescent suicides occur at home, with parents in the next room. In fact, during any given year, 125,000 people are hospitalized in the United States for depressive symptoms, while another 200,000 receive outpatient treatment. In fact, 23 million Americans still suffer from hypertension. In fact, the average middle-aged man is only one emotional shock or sudden exertion away from a serious heart attack. In fact, there are an estimated 10 million people suffering from alcoholism in the United States. In fact, between 100,000 and 200,000 children are regularly assaulted by their parents. 2,000 children die only with use of neglect. In fact, the death rate for bachelors under 65 of heart disease and cancer is double that of married men. In fact, the divorce rate has more than doubled in the last 10 years. In fact, the average young man has a middle-aged body. He can't run the length of the city block without getting breakfast. This is the black and the white. Statistics show people still need help. A different kind of help. Not just another physical fitness program, but a psychological fitness program. To give them a fitness never before available, and one never so badly needed. Just as the time came when physical fitness gained understanding and acceptance, psychological fitness has now come of age. Just as physical fitness has shaped and toned our muscles, psychological fitness can strengthen our personalities to keep them in shape. And just as physical fitness keeps our bodies alert and alive, psychological fitness can keep our spirits sharp and attuned. Psychological fitness is going beyond the barriers of the past and of society. Psychological fitness is your intellect and emotions operating in harmony. Psychological fitness is achieving goals you believed unattainable. Psychological fitness is your personality working to its maximum capacity. This age of complete fitness is for people who are okay, but want more. fitness, it is possible to have more than just okay relationships. It is possible to have more than great feelings. It is possible to have assertive attitudes towards work. It is possible to begin to play as an adult. It is possible to have friends who know you and whom you know. It is possible to have a sex life that blends love and pleasure. It is possible to dream new dreams and to be the star of your own dreams. It is possible to change your weaknesses. The theories of psychological fitness insist that you have the right to your strengths, that you have the right to your own money, that you have the right to a long-lasting relationship, that you have the right to success, that you have the right to friends who care about you and whom you care about, that you have the right to your tears, that you have the right to your anger, that you have the right to feel good. And now, you can exercise your rights. Because after years of psychotherapy and psychology, rehashing phobias, blocks, unfinished business, psychological fitness has begun. And the belief that the incompletions, that the unsolved problems, that the frustrations must be part of our everyday lives is finally coming to an end. You now have a way of doing for yourself on the inside what you've been doing for yourself on the outside.
Do we need that?
Yeah.
Help in this back.
This is great for physical fitness, lifting all these things. Great.
What we're talking about is a psychology that you have to do. I'm going to give you a little test. It's a quick test. You don't have to tell anybody the results. You score the results yourself. You decide what to do. Ask yourself, how expressive are you? Ask yourself, how active are you? How much feeling do you allow yourself to have? How much clarity do you allow yourself to have? And how much contact do you make? Because what we're saying is until you begin to allow yourself to use your personality in all of those areas, you're limiting your consciousness. You're limiting your performance in life. You are performing at less than your capacity. You may be doing brilliant work in school or in research or in your job. And if you don't have the ability to feel and have relationships, you're a fool. Because it doesn't get you anything to be just brilliant. It's like dream interpretation. We could interpret your dreams for you and tell you things about yourself, and you'd say, oh, aren't they smart? Isn't that wonderful? But it doesn't give you the experience of what you're doing. It would be like us jogging for you. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We want you, yes it does. Okay, I'm going to be jogging for people now. Just sign up here. What we want you to do is become active. The essential ingredient in psychological fitness is that you take action. When you do, you'll begin to know what it means to be psychologically fit. The minute you begin to increase your expression a little bit, you're going to have a reference point. You're going to say, God, I'm quiet most of the time. Or when you allow yourself to be more active, you're going to say, I can't believe how passive I am. Where did I learn that? Because that's what we think they are. We think, let me get this chalk. In psychological fitness, that the things that you don't do are just things you haven't learned to do. And instead of focusing on what's wrong with you or on your problems, begin asking yourself, what psychological skills am I strong in? And what psychological skills do I need to develop? Because then you're not a sicko. Because it's too hard to be sick. Do you understand that? I'll tell you a very, very brief story. A woman came to me. She had seen us on national TV, and she really wanted help. And she was depressive. I mean, very depressive. I mean, if this woman took Thorazine, it was slowed her down not at all. I mean, if you took her blood and drank it, you would die. She was really depressed. She had been seriously depressed for 10 years. And I said, okay, you want to come to my clinic, you want therapy from me? Your sessions will be 10 minutes a day. She said, what? She said, I'm not going to pay you all that money you want for 10 minutes a day. I said, that's all the time I'm going to give you. She said, why? I said, you're too depressive to be around. She said, how could you say that to me? I said, look at you just told me terrible things. Anyway, your session's over for today. She came back the next day. She was furious with me. She said, you are really stupid. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to kill myself, and then I'm going to sue you. I said, okay, just do it in that order. She said, you know, you just don't have any empathy. I said, you're right. She said, you're heartless. I said, you're right. She said, you're stupid. I said, you're right. I said, your session's over. She was really upset. This went on for a number of days. Now, one of the main things that she had was this recurrent dream in which she's just in blackness. She feels immobilized. She feels paralyzed. She doesn't know what to do. Situations occurring on Thursday or Friday. She has the dream, and she goes, for the first time, she goes, "Oh!" in the dream. And all of a sudden, a little light appears in the dream. And in the shadows, she sees her husband. His name is Bart. She says, "Bart, is that you?" And the dream gets lighter. In the distance, she sees her mother. And she goes, "Mother! Mother!" And she said all these terrible things that she had to say. And the more she talked, the brighter it became. And eventually, the dream was very lucid, very light, very clear. She came in the office on Friday, and she was absolutely furious with me. She said, "What have you done?" I said, "Well, I've made some money off of you." I worked on my book the rest of the time during the sessions. She said, "I've had that dream for 10 years. She said, "I'm good at being depressed. I don't know what to do. I don't feel depressed." That's what we're saying to you. You're good at having your problems. You're good at understanding yourself. You're good at being a little psychologist who knows things and say, "Oh, it's my wife's fault, it's my husband's fault. Next year everything will be okay. As soon as they get the master charge paid off, everything." You're sure, but you're good at that behavior. You're good at overeating. You're good at worrying. You wouldn't do it so repetitively if you weren't good at it. We don't want you to stop it. We just want you to become good at other things so you have other good behavior to do. And the way to do that is begin looking at the dynamics of your personality and how they work or how they're not working. And when you do, you can begin exercising yourself.
Before you leave tonight, we want to teach you some specific methods of psychological fitness that you can try out. We can teach you some related to dreams, and we can teach you some related to just talking in a relationship. I want you to know that we're skimming. I hope you can tell that. We're skimming over lots of books. We're skimming over lots of research. We also give many research presentations. We write a lot of research articles. We're not going into that. It's not because we're not interested. It's just because that's not the emphasis we're making in this talk. If you're interested in that, if you're interested professionally in psychology and counseling and psychotherapy, in research on subjects that we've been talking about, write to us and we'll send you a publication list and you can just order whatever research articles you want. There are many, many, many of them. You can write to the Center Foundation at 7165 Sunset Boulevard, Los Angeles. We're right next to Famous Amos Cookies.
You know Famous Amos Cookies? We want you to fill out those forms, those yellow forms, steal pencils, do whatever you can.
Now, let me teach you a few techniques that you can try out. First technique, I want to see how many people have trouble remembering dreams. Let's just see. Oh, the majority. Oh, good. Okay, what you need is to get an ear of corn and put it under your pillow. This is what you do. Don't work hard at it. If you want to remember dreams, don't go through that whole routine, and we've advised this before. We're taking back this advice. Don't go through that whole routine of putting a pad and pencil there and determining that you're going to remember a dream. You'll make schoolwork out of it. And dreams are not mainly about ideas and words. They are pictures of feelings. You remember that? So if you want to remember your dreams, you have to learn how to pay attention to your feelings. So when you go to bed at night, just ask yourself, how am I feeling? Notice how you're feeling. That's all. And then when you wake up in the morning, do the same thing. Notice how you're feeling. Even if you can't remember even a tiny little picture, not a scrap of dialogue, nothing, blank, blotto. As far as you know, you haven't dreamed in the last 20 years. We had a guy come into our laboratory one time, our sleep laboratory. He claimed that he had not dreamt in the last 20 years. He was so hard to convince. We hooked him up to the EEG machine, and we awoke him right in the middle of one of his last dreams, a long one. And he said, yeah, I was dreaming. It was wonderful. It was Technicolor and everything. That's wonderful. I dreamt for the first time tonight. So some people are hard to convince that they dream every night, 5 times a night, but you do. And they're there to be remembered. When you wake up in the morning, remember, you just ask, how do I feel? Notice, you may feel frustrated, you may feel sad, you may feel angry, you may feel eager, you may feel a combination. And then, sometime during the morning, maybe while you're eating breakfast or taking a shower, make up a dream. Just take 2 or 3 minutes, it'll be a daydream. Make up a dream related to how you felt when you first awoke. That feeling that you wake up with will be related to what you were dreaming about. So if you woke up really frustrated, make up a really frustrating dream, a real tooth grinder where things are just happening to you and you can't say anything back. Do that. That's all. Just a couple of minutes. If you do that for 3 or 4 mornings in a row, I can guarantee you that within a week, you will spontaneously remember at least a fragment of your nighttime dreams. It's a kind of pump priming process. You start to pay attention to the stuff that dreams are made of. Dreams are pictures of feelings. And once you start picturing your feelings and noticing your feelings, you will begin remembering your dreams. Then, here's a very simple method of beginning to exercise your personality based upon your dreams. Simply talk several times a week to one of your friends or several of your friends about your dreams and how you're feeling in your dreams. That's all. Don't try to interpret them. Don't try to work on them. Just start. It's like starting with a jog walk. But you have to start.
And everybody says, that's too simple. You know, try it. If you just try that one thing, you'll so quickly begin to move. Everyone says that's too simple. But if you try these simple exercises, just like physically jogging, you'll begin to do more difficult things on your own. You'll begin to be more expressive to people. You'll begin to say more of your feelings. You'll begin to be more vulnerable when you're with someone that you love. You'll be willing to be clearer. You won't make yourself stupid about your problems. That's what we want. We want to change some of the cultural and social values about psychological fitness. We want a positive mental health in this country. Because what we have now is we have the number one killer is hypertension. And hypertension is not something that just drops on us from the sky. We create it. And we're killing ourselves. And that's what we don't want. We want people to die because you're ready to die. We don't want you to kill yourself because you don't know what else to do. And most of you think about dying as just something that you eventually have to do, and you get ready for it from about 40 on. We think you should be kicking ass from about 95 on. That's what we want. We want that kind of psychological revolution in the country, which is just like the physical revolution. It's not something that you have to go to. It's not some place where you have to proclaim it. It's something that you do on your own. And you develop it for yourselves and with your friends. We think that's essential.
If you don't want to start with dreams, you can start with something else. You can start with simply talking 3 times a week to a friend about your feelings. It's that easy. Just set aside 15 minutes and talk with a friend about your feelings. Most people recommend that when you start jogging, you jog about 3 times a week. Don't try to get deep. Don't try to confront one another. Just talk about how you feel. Talk about something other than meals and movies, how you feel. And you will begin to design your own psychological exercise program. You don't have to be a psychotherapeutic psychodiagnostician to do that. It's much more like physical education or PE instructing. You can come up with some recommendations for yourself. Most people start jogging because they think it's a good idea for them. Most people start playing sports or bicycling or walking because they think it's a good idea for them. They prescribe it. You don't have to wait for the expert. And if you start to use these personality dynamics that we're talking about, you can begin to get sophisticated in your psychological exercise program. Let me give you an example. Somebody has to be brave enough to volunteer here. Somebody tell me what you think your biggest weakness is on one of these dynamics. Expression, activity, feeling, clarity, contact. Clarity? Okay. That's a tougher one to work with.
Okay, I'll tell you what you do.
You stumped me.
But that's why we work as a team. I am not stumped.
That guy over there was actually supposed to raise his hand. Charlie, remember, I asked this question, you raise your hand. You say expression. You know, I go through.
So choose clarity. All you have to do, how often do you want to exercise psychologically? Be careful, sucker. I'll drag you into the clinic and I'll take you on for once. Now, let's go. How many times?
He said, how about 3 times a week or once a day?
Okay, start with 3 times a week. For how long?
10 minutes,
Oh, that's too long.
1 minute.
1 minute. And for what duration? How many weeks? Okay. Write this down, what you said. 3 times a week, 1 minute for 2 weeks. And all you have to do to increase your clarity is sit down with a friend. Do you have any friends?
Then he gets through the halls.
Is Beardo your friend? He's your friend? It's really nice. I can see you guys have really close relationship. We'll work on contact next week. Sit down and just identify what you're not. So say like this. I'm not the blackboard. I'm not a microphone. That's what I said. I'm not a watch. I'm not my father. I'm not my mother. Do that for 1 week, and for the next week, just begin saying what you are. Very simple in what you have. Now, that may seem too simple for you college students and professors and wives and whatever else.
Concubines.
In Iowa?
I hope so.
We're going to talk to the concubines